The three young men went into the wild Oregon forest to search for the lost treasure. They used canoe to go upstream without knowing they were making a mistake. The movie JTeam gives you as maned, without a paddle. This movie reminds me of a childhood saying, each with different hidden aspects. Like the main characters in my story today, the four of them grew up together. Their childhood was the crazy youthful years. Later, they went on different paths and became the men of society. Until one day, three people received the news of the death of their other friend. All three of them rushed back to their hometowns to attend their best friend's funeral. The tall guy was Jerry and the dwarf doctor named Dan arrived on time. Only curly guy Tom was late. The sound of his motorbike caught the attention of everyone at the funeral. After the funeral, the three of them regretted talking about their friend's accidental death while skydiving. In the evening, the three of them returned to visit their old place. They came to a treehouse that had been built since childhood. When entering the old house, it wasn't covered by the dense spiderweb as expected. It was as warm as before, making them remember their childhood memories. At this time, the treasure box of a wanted criminal from decades ago appeared in front of them. The wanted criminal, Cooper, jumped off the plane with the money he stole and fell into the woods. The three of them sat down and opened the box. Inside the box were full of memories that they greatly cherished their childhoods. Although those were a bit weird. Jerry discovered a toy compass, later was a treasure map. Jerry happily showed it to everyone. It turned out that the deceased friend was really searching for the treasure. He wanted to gather his friends to find the treasure that year. They remembered that he contacted everyone to ask them for a hiking trip last year. But the three of them all refused their own excuses. It seemed that he was on his way to find the treasure and simulated the thief's skydiving route. Unexpectedly, he lost his life. Jerry closed the box and brought the compass to finish his friend's dream was still in progress. Dan was still hesitating when Jerry and Curly Hair made up their mind. In the end, Dan left the job with a smile and decided to go madly with his friends again. The next day, the three of them went together searching for the treasure. They felt happy as if they had gone back to their carefree time. After they listened to their favorite childhood tapes and danced happily in the car. Eventually they reached the small town near the forest. The three people were looking to rent a canoe when the town sheriff discovered them. He asked the three of them what they were doing here. Fortunately, Tom promptly stood up to block Dan's honest mouth with his wit. Although the sheriff saw his wobbly wobble, he was helpless, so they let them drive away. Everything had been prepared. The canoe renter reminded them to be safe, then the three of them rode on the road. At the beginning of their journey back to nature, they extremely excited. At night, while they were making a fire to make dinner, something unexpected happened. A bear appeared behind Tom. Jerry and Dan motioned him to stop talking. Tom turned around in fear and screamed. The three people ran away in fear. Dan stumbled. Jerry and Tom come back to call him quickly get up, but in time he was taken away by the bear. Unexpectedly, the bear brought Dan back to the cave to feed him while hibernating. Jerry and Tom followed to save him. The bear came to force Dan to eat raw meat again. Dan was afraid to pretend to eat. When the bear turned away to get food, Dan quickly ran out. The three of them rushed away as if flying away when they saw the bear had chased. They quickly climbed up to a tree, and the bear angrily destroyed all of their stuffs. They wearily embraced the tree and slept on it until morning came. When they regained consciousness, the bear was still rolling under the tree. Suddenly there was a loud bang that made the bear panic and flee. They also quickly climbed down and walked towards the source of the sound. By the river they saw a small boat in the middle of the river. On the boat two men were throwing mines into the river to catch fish. The two of them looked very ferocious and the bear didn't know when it would appear again. They decided to go back to the boat but their cell phones were already taken away by the bear. They had only a way to get on the boat. Dan thought this trip would be over, but Jerry and Tom didn't think so. As a result, the three of them continued their journey. But the map had been damaged by the big bear. They get lost and didn't know which way to go. The water was flowing more and more rapidly. They had never been in this situation before. They could not turn around so their boat capsized. The three of them all fell into the water. Jerry struggled to get on the boat and dragged Dan. The two were safe and shouted Tom's name. Tom was on the bottom of the capsized boat. When he turned the boat over to get out, Jerry and Dan fell into the water. The three of them finally got on the boat. Thinking it was safe, they discovered the waterfall ahead. They fell into the water without any response. The boat was broken to pieces, but they fortunate enough to land without being injured. Dan was very frightened and just wanted to go home, but without a map, how could he go home? Fortunately, Jerry found the compass. Tom and Jerry quickly regained their spirits, only Dan walking behind was worried. The three of them climbed the mountain and finally saw a spark of fire in a grove not far away. They were happy to feel like they were saved. But when they reached the house, they found out that this was the home of two men in the river. Apparently they found them. Seeing their bizarre and brutal behavior, they fled in fear into the warehouse behind. But unexpectedly in the warehouse there are hundreds of cigarettes smuggled. The three of them now understood that those two were indeed drug dealers hiding in the woods. At this moment, the noise in the warehouse once again attracted their attention. 3 people ran outside but encountered 2 dogs. They carried weapons to open the barn doors and pointed guns at the 3 of them. Dan tried to explain but they didn't need to know, so they attacked. All 3 of them were pressed into corners. They used Dan to break the wall to escape. Jerry and Tom hurriedly pulled Dan away. Those 2 men carried a dog that quickly chased after. The 3 frightened people fled and accidentally touched the warning flares set around. In an instant, the flames covered everywhere the smoke, everyone risked their lives to flee. Because of being inhaled so much smoke, they kept giggling unconsciously. Even though they were scared to death, they couldn't help laughing. Jerry even saw his friend and became the childhood pose that took them to flee to the lagoon. The 3 of them hid in the water. The other 2 also chased to the lagoon. Although it was very thrilling, the 3 eventually escaped without being discovered. They chased along the river all night. By the time they got back, they found out that the forest was already on fire. They swore to get 3 of them. On the other hand, the 3 of them also ran through the night. Dan was very tired and started complaining because they put him in danger. Then he was chased by drugs and still lost in the forest. While Dan was scolding, the wound on Tom's arm caught his attention. As a doctor, he began to help his friend handle the wound. On the other hand, the other 2 were also armed with weapons, preparing to chase them. The 3 of them calmly sat down and talked. It turned out that Jerry was bankrupt. At this moment in the forest there was a phone call. This ringtone was set by Dan. Bond they quickly went to find. They hadn't even found the phone yet. They found out that the 2 of them drove up. The 3 men fled in fear into the forest. They heard someone's sound. Then Tom decided to climb a tree to observe while Jerry and Dan were below. Suddenly Tom climbed to the top of the tree and saw 2 beautiful women playing with water not far away. The 3 of them quickly climbed to the treehouse. It turned out that these 2 beauties voluntarily returned to the forest to live a primitive life. They invited the 3 of them to stay in the house. One of the 2 legs of this sister looks really eye-catching. They used the radio in the treehouse to call for help, but accidentally sent the signal to the 2 men. It wasn't long before they were happy when the other 2 brought their saws and threatened to cut tree. Jerry decided to sneak out from the tree and stole the car. And the people in the front tried to find a way to solve them without affecting the forest. They threw all the collected things down to them. They desperately shot at the stump, but didn't find out Jerry, Tom and Dan were stealing the car and escaped. Those 2 also immediately chased after the car. Faced with their drowning, all 3 of them were unfamiliar with the terrain. As a result, they went all the way then fell into cliff. Fortunately below the cliff is a large lake. Only in time when they chased, they saw the 3 of them on the shore. But since they were familiar with the terrain here, they weren't hurry. He knew that there were mountains ahead and there was only one possible way. So they went around to block. The 3 of them went deeper into the forest the colder they went. Finally at night, Dan began to complain again. While he was indignant, it was raining heavily. The 3 of them were both cold and wet. Survival instinct could make 3 people to drop their anger and hugged each other, finally curled up under a small slit to fall asleep. In the middle of the night, the 3 of them suddenly woke up from some unknown factor. As the 3 of them were preparing to argue, a hunter appeared in front of them with a cat gun. The 3 of them were taken away on a cold rainy night by a hunter with a gun. Not long after, the other 2 also chased and discovered where the 3 of them slept. Based on the messy footprints, he deduced that the 3 of them had been taken away. They followed their tracks to find them. The hunter took the 3 of them to a forest hut. It turned out that this person was cold from the outside, but actually a very warm person. He not only brought the 3 of them home to heat them, but also gave them clothes to wear. Even more surprising when he was the best accomplice of the wanted thief that year, Cooper. Cooper and his accomplice agreed on where to skydive and land. Waiting for Cooper to release the flares, he went to see him and the 2 could go together. But then the blizzard struck, and he got no signal. Police and he searched the mountains for more than half a year but found no trace of Cooper. In the end the police left, and he stayed. Maybe because his friend was a wanted criminal, he must fled the world. Maybe because of boring life outside, living in the mountains was much more comfortable. Early the next morning, Jerry went out to defecate when he overheard a phone call. It turned out that the big bear was nearby, the phone was left behind. Jerry rushed to the phone happily, then pulled out the phone to call his girlfriend. Unexpectedly, a girlfriend's voice message sent to a breakup request. Jerry collapsed in an instant that even the gunfire did not scare him. Everyone was looking for a place to hide, and Jerry was suffering from a collapse in love. Fortunately, the uncle pulled his ear and pulled him aside. The uncle instructed them to run west and then go out in front to kick the door to let them escape. He held out the pistol, fired continuously at the other 2. They quickly ran away from their belongings. The car was also shot to fire. 3 people ran for half a day. At this point Jerry discovered that they had arrived at an iron mine. And the compass didn't work anymore. If that were the case, maybe Cooper miscalculated until he knew it was too late. All 3 suddenly stepped the trap and fell into the hole. 3 people were falling into the hole suddenly discovered Cooper's body. It turned out that Cooper parachuted into a hole and broke his leg. He was unable to walk and met a blizzard. In the last days, he could only burn money to warm his body. But this still did not save him. The three looked at the body of a generation of thieves, and they felt that the most important thing in life was to be alive. When they had fulfilled their wish, they also decided to return home. By this time, the other two had also reached nearby. The three of them in the pit also found light in the support, able to crawl from there, but the crater was too small. They decided to let Dan go first. Dan tried to crawl forward, Jerry and Tom below singing cheering for him. Unexpectedly, the singing attracted the attention of the other two. Dan finally crawled upwards, but those two have found the hole, to save friends. Dan found a wooden stick and quietly came behind the two, then beat them down with a stick. But accidentally caused a fight between them with Jerry and Tom. Dan above was extremely worried. Suddenly the town's sheriff appeared. Dan rushed to ask for help. Wait until his friends crawled out of the crater. It turned out that the sheriff and the other two were actually accomplices. When they were falling into despair, Dan discovered a grenade and handed it to Jerry. Jerry started to talk seriously and slowly approached the three men. All three of them fled to the back. Jerry threw the grenade desperately. Seeing the grenade right in front of them, the other three turned and fled again. But the big tree was knocked down by a grenade and fell to the ground on them. It was the way that helped them destroy the cave and helped the uncle find his friend's bones. The uncle gave the money Cooper left to the three of them. Then he took his friend's bone to fulfill his promise. Jerry, Dan had no shortage of money, so they left money for Tom because he went bankrupt. After returning home, Jerry proposed to his girl. Dan has actually abandoned the city and returned to the treehouse to find the beauties. In this adventure, it made all three clearly saw what was the most precious responsibility in life. It was the same thing that they had found their own happiness. Although they was thoughtlessly, but they was happy about it. Would you like to have a ride like those three guys? Please comment to let JTeam know.